Today we're going to show you how to replace the water line on your refrigerator. That's a really easy job. All you're going to need is a 5/16 nut driver, a pair of slip joint pliers, a sharp utility knife, and you should pick yourself up a 5/16 union as well. Let me show you how we do it. Now, to do this repair, we'll need to access the back of the refrigerator, so we're going to have to pull it away from the wall, disconnect the power, and turn off the water supply and disconnect it from the back of the water valve. Now, with the back panel removed here and the water line disconnected, so next we're going to remove the 5/16 screw that holds that water valve to the side of the cabinet. We'll pull that valve out where we can get at it. Disconnect the wire harness from it if you need to gain a little more access. Now, your valve may have the thread-on type connectors such as this one does, or it may be the push-on style. Either way, disconnect the 5/16 one. And you may get a little water come out of that valve, but we can set that aside now. And if yours has the thread-on connector, you can actually pull that off of the tubing. Now, typically this tubing cracks from heat from the compressor tubing, so it's either going to be cracked in this area here or right in this area. So if you've got enough good tubing where it enters the refrigerator, we'll just cut it there and we'll put our union in that position. We'll put it in that position. Now, if the tubing is dried and cracked right up through to the floor, you can actually put the union inside the refrigerator compartment. We just remove the two bottom crispers and the reservoir will be in that area. You can just cut it there and put the union in that spot. So with a sharp utility knife, I'm just going to cut that tubing. All right, so make sure we get a nice straight cut. Now that we've cut that tubing, we need to make sure that we have a nice straight cut on it. So pull any excess down through the hole that you can get, and take your knife with a block of wood and make a nice straight cut. Now, before we pull this tubing out of the way, it's threaded in underneath the machine compartment here in a rather tight channel, so it's best if you can connect the new tubing to the old tubing. What I've done is taking a rather large self-tapping screw, and I've cut it to about 1 inch in length. You could probably use a 3.5 inch nail, something like that, and cut it to about 1 inch in length. We'll slide one end into one end of the tubing. We'll take the new tubing, slide it onto the other end, and then we'll tape the two pieces together with a little bit of electrical tape. The metal screw just provides a little support at that joint so that it doesn't flex. Now we can feed that tubing through. We'll pull on one side and push on the other until we've pulled it through, and we'll unravel our tape. Now we can discard the old tubing. We'll position the new water tubing so that it's not going to be up against the refrigeration tubing where it can gain some heat. You use caution when working around that tubing because it is fragile enough that we don't want to kink it. We'll position it so that it's not going to touch it. And then we can install the union. So we'll slide a nut onto each side, and we'll push the tubing right till it bottoms out in the union, and then we'll tighten that nut. Same on the opposite end. Now we'll tighten both of those nuts securely so that we don't get any leaks. Next, we'll need to determine what length that we need to cut that tubing off. And then using a sharp utility knife blade and a block of wood so that we protect our floor, we'll just make a nice straight cut down through that tubing. We'll discard the old tubing. Next, we'll install the compression nut on the end of that new portion of tubing. Make sure we leave lots of it protruding so that we can insert it into the valve. That needs to bottom out completely. And I'll tighten that nut, just a little extra with the pliers. We'll reconnect the wire harness. And then reposition the valve and mount it to the side of the cabinet. Put the tab into the locating hole. And reinstall that 5/16 hex head screw. Now we'll make sure that the tubing is not binding up against anything or laying up against the refrigeration tubing. We're ready to reinstall the back panel and reconnect the inlet water supply.